Today's session is actually our second event in our Emerging Educator Speaker series. The series is built around topics that matter to you, our Emerging Educators community, and we'd love to keep the momentum going. So, if there's a topic that you would like to see us cover in the future session, please reach out. You can send us an email or just drop the suggestion right here in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And now I'd like to take a moment for the land acknowledgement. The University of Calgary, located in the heart of southern Alberta, both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nation, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including Shiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation within Alberta, including Nose Hill Métis District 5 and Elbow Métis District 6.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Renisha. My name is Jacqueline Carter. I am an educational developer in the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning, and alongside Ernisha and Shreyasi, who's also on the line with us today, we've just been working, as Ernisha mentioned, on creating opportunities for all of you to share your expertise and resources in the speaker series. So as Ernisha mentioned, please reach out to us if you have ideas. Our aims today are really to talk about AI and its practical applications in the classroom for the teaching and learning contexts that matter to you as graduate student TAs, maybe early sessional instructors. And so our objectives are to explore strategies for using AI as a support tool while preserving students' independent voices and critical thinking, examine how we talk about AI with students and the impact of these conversations, and to identify practical approaches to encouraging responsible AI use. And so we have compiled together a group of experts from across our campus who are going to walk us through how they have these types of conversations and engage with AI topics and activities in their classrooms and in their teaching approaches. And so I will invite each of them to introduce themselves as we get started, but please know to the three of you that we're really grateful for sharing your expertise with this community and excited to see how this conversation plays out. So without further ado, I will turn things over to our first speaker, Elnaz.
Hi everyone, I'm Elnaz. I have my PhD in nutritional sciences and currently I have 3 roles. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the Faculty of Kinesiology and I've been a postdoc since January 2020, just a little before the pandemic started. And my research is around prenatal nutrition and pregnancy outcomes in that role. I am also an instructor at the Athabasca University. I started in July 2022 in that role, and I teach the psychological sciences in everyday life, and that is an asynchronous course, which is project-based. I'm also an instructor at the Mount Royal University since January 2025, and I teach 2 synchronous courses there with multiple assignments. Next slide, please. So first off, I would like to share with you some of my experiences with how the students are using AI in my own classes. I wouldn't call myself an expert, as Jacqueline said. Thank you for that, but I'm just sharing my experience and what I think about how the students are using, why they're using, and how we can support them. So in the course that I'm teaching at Athabasca University, the Psychological Sciences in Everyday Life, one of the assignments is that students are required to post weekly updates on their project data collection, and then their peers, the classmates, should post kind of constructive comments on those project updates. So I have put a sample of that here. So this is a sample of like the project update along with the graph that they have in their project, and then their peers should think about this update and then give constructive comments. So it has been sometimes I have noticed that there have been times when the students are not really thinking about this project update and are not giving the comment themselves. And there are some red flags through which I can understand that an AI has generated the commentary. So some of the things that I've noticed that kind of indicates that AI was used was that instead of kind of giving having critical thinking piece to that comment. They're just giving some feedback on how the post is written. Like they say, I like how the post is written. If you add this to this post, it will look nicer, something in those lines. While the objective in this assignment for the students is to critically think about the design of a project and how the data is being collected, what the confounders could be, and whether or not they have been accounted for. Could you please? Yeah, thank you. So the other example that I would like to share with you is the Wellness and Student course, in which there's an assignment called photo essay. So the students are required to take a photo of the environment and then describe how that environment can impact health. So that's in the context of determinants of health subject. So sometimes the students take the picture themselves, but ask the AI to create the content for them. And then sometimes they even ask the generative AI to create the photo for them. So what I do to kind of make sure that it is genuine and authentic work, they have to present their photo essay in the class. And then when they are presenting the picture, I ask for details on where this is, like when the picture was taken. And then when they're talking about how the environment would impact health, I would dive deeper and then ask about whys of things to make sure that they have thought about it and they know why they have written what they have written. And so that's the way that I try to make sure that if they've used AI, have they used it responsibly or not? Next slide, please. So throughout these experiences, I have had some reflections on how the AI is impacting students' learning, and are we supporting them, and what causes their use of AI. So the first question I really would like to discuss with you guys today is, do our course outlines support students in navigating this new tool in their learning or not? So next slide. Yeah, thank you. So usually what happens is we say use of artificial intelligence is prohibited. And this is my experience, which you might share as well, is that we are usually part of a team of instructors. And then sometimes we're not on the same page. And then those who have prepared this course outline far before we just joined them, they have put prohibited. And then it's really hard to kind of openly discuss this with them. Why prohibited? This AI is out there. And if we just simply say it's prohibited, will the students not really use it? And I think that's where the students will go. They will use it. And then this will kind of, we prohibiting this and then they using it will cause a kind of an atmosphere of dishonesty and mistrust, which is not really good in the learning environment. And then the next question that came to my mind was, what derives AI use among students? So some of these factors are related to how we are designing a course and our assignments, and some of them are related to the students. So the ones that are related to us is the course load first. Sometimes we have too many assignments, and to be honest, some of these assignments are not really adding to students' learning, and they're just time consuming and lead to kind of irresponsible use of AI to just get things off the road. And then the other factor on our end is unclear assignment descriptions and expectations. Sometimes we do not clarify what we want really from the students, and then they kind of presume that this should be a very complicated thing. And then they think they cannot handle it themselves. So they just go and ask AI to generate something for them. The same goes with the rubrics. Sometimes in our rubrics, we're not really clear about how we're going to grade their assignments. And then tight deadlines. Sometimes we have big projects with tight deadlines. They don't have enough time, and then that leads to some of this AI use. And the factors on the students' part is their busy schedules. A lot of students are working now to pay for the courses and to make ends meet. And also language barriers. The international students particularly, they might not be very fluent in English yet. And then when we have in our rubric that we have some points for clarity of language, for grammar, etc., then they feel helpless and they think, okay, I will just ask AI to do this for me and I will get rid of this. And then there's this factor of neurodiversity. So a lot of students are struggling with mental health disorders and anxiety and depression and other types of neurodiversity, which impact how early on they can focus on their assignments. So they procrastinate, and then the last night they suddenly feel like, okay, they have to do something, and then they ask AI to just quickly generate something for them. So the next question that came to my mind is how AI use is affecting their learning. So these are just my experience. This should be very kind of comprehensive, but these are the things that I could come up with through my years of teaching. So one is normalization of irresponsible AI use. So if we tell the students that you should not use AI, and then for a lot of those reasons, they are going to use AI irresponsibly because they don't know how to use it as one reason, then it will become normal among students to use it in a cheating way to just create content and submit it as assignments. The second thing that will happen is that their critical thinking will not develop as desired. And we know that this critical thinking is not just for the assignments, it is very critical for their next stages of education and career. So we really want to preserve that and nurture that in our students. So it's very tricky if we do not talk about this to students and then leave them at the danger of diminished critical thinking by using AI irresponsibly. And then fairness will be at stake. So how this happens, when we write artificial intelligence is prohibited, we know that amongst our students, some of them will strictly follow the course outline and will not use AI, even if they really need it for language refining or something like that. And then the others use it. And then they submit something that is cleaner, then they will get better points on some of the categories of the rubric. So then this actually undermines fairness. So let's go to the next slide. So what are some of the strategies that I have come up with? So I think there are two layers of strategies here. The first is about how we can address this by having open discussions with our own peers as instructors about course outlines and assignments. So talking about, rather than prohibiting AI use, let's emphasize following institutional AI use frameworks. So different universities, including MRU, have started to look at AI as something that's there to help students rather than something that's for cheating. And they have this institutional AI use frameworks that we instructors and also students can use. And then we can also discuss with our peers how we can adjust the coursework as needed so that the students don't feel rushed just to submit something, no matter how it is generated. And also clarifying assignments and grading rubrics, and also including some part on rubric about how the AI was used, if it was used and how was it used. And then kind of having it in our radar when grading the assignments. The next one, which is, I think, even more important, is educating students on how to use AI responsibly. So what I do with my students is that during the first day of class, I tell them, okay, I know that your course outline says that AI use is prohibited, but some of you, for any reason, might want to use it. So in this class, as your instructor, I just want to discuss with you how you could use it for better learning experience. So first, I share some examples of how AI could generate false information. For example, I say, okay, I used this prompt, and then what AI gave me was not quite right based on my own expertise in this field of, for example, nutrition. Then I share examples of how they can use AI responsibly, like how they can use it for refining of language and how they can use AI to learn some things, but not to directly use it to do the work for them. For example, if they are going to use a specific statistical test in their project, they could use AI to get information about that test. I also encourage them to critically reflect on what the AI generates for them. And the way they can do it and make sure that they are critically kind of reflecting on the content is that they ask themselves this question: will they be able to defend what they have submitted to me with evidence? Like if they are writing a specific sentence, if I ask, why is it so, can they answer it? Or will their answer be something like, because AI said? And then the most important thing that I emphasize to them always is that they should remain in the driver's seat, and they are the ones accountable for what they submit as their assignments, and that AI is only a tool. It just looks at algorithms and it just creates content based on what it kind of gets from other articles, etc. But it's for us to validate that information and refine it and then submit it and be accountable for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elnaz. That was fantastic. We are going to turn it over to our second presenter now, Shoaib.
Hello, everyone. I am Shoaib, and my name is Shoaib Akhtar. I got my PhD in genetics from the University of Tokyo, and following that, I had been a postdoc in neurogenetics and molecular neuroscience at University of California, Davis. Recently, I moved to Calgary, and I am a postdoctoral associate in molecular anthropology here. And thank you so much, Jacqueline and Sriasi, to bring this opportunity to us to speak to the people about the AI use. And I think Elnaz already told us a lot about like the use of AI in classroom and in teaching. So I'm going to talk about a little bit different as the AI use in research. And there are like I think almost everyone nowadays is using AI, but there are some few questions which we should address before we use, and we should learn what are the best practices to use AI in research. Here I list the 4 questions, and I hope by the end of this presentation, you should have some insights on these questions. And the questions are: is it ethical or not? Should we use it or not? Does AI qualify to be a scientist? What things should one consider before using AI in research? And I think this is a very basic questions, but like since AI boom have been here for more than 2 years, but still like these have been topics of interest. The people are talking about these. There are several seminars, webinars, editorials, and all those kind of things ongoing, and these are still under discussion. So I tried to compile some knowledge from the peer-reviewed research rather than my own personal thoughts or the random thoughts. Let's have a look. So next, please. So here is this paper which was published in Scientometrics. Scientometrics is the study of metrics associated with science. For example, impact factors, citations, H index, I-10 index. And recently, there had been another metric which have been very popular, which is retractions. So those retractions has been very popular recently because in recent years there had been like a very much frequency of retractions in journals, and even in the very big journals in the peer-reviewed research, which is strange. And so far, there's many scientometrics people. They are trying to investigate that, characterize and see the trends of these retractions, and there had been many, but I just like talking about two which are associated with AI. Even with AI there had been many characters of the trend associated, but there's like two major which we can see as like taking the lead. I'll be talking about both of those two. And those are the first thing about them are the randomly generated content, because if you ask AI for anything, it will generate a lot of random content. And this is the findings of this paper. And it was actually published in a very early phase when the AI was in use. And they suggest that, sorry, okay, the next. Yeah, they suggest that the results suggest the number of retractions due to randomly generated content is on the rise, highlighting the urgent need to establish guidelines for responsible and transparent use of AI tools and implement disciplinary measures. So, by itself, the randomly generated content is one problem. The another problem is the fabricated references. I saw like I was following the retraction watch, which follows the retractions, like how did a retraction happen, what were the causes, and we can see like these had been two popular things: the fabricated references and the randomly generated content. Some of you may have followed, but let me tell you, a recent paper which has been highlighted, which was retracted, I think, the last month in May in Scientific Reports. It had used some non-standard terminologies. Those terminologies actually doesn't exist in that particular disciplines, but like sometimes, like if you use AI and that randomly generated content was fit that much into the paper that even it passed the peer review, it passed the editorial reviews, it was accepted and published online. And later the readers realized those mistakes, and they contacted the editorial office and it was retracted. And the other numbers of, as I mentioned, the fabricated references. Here I picked up this graph from a paper which was recently published in Lancet. Uh, they actually analyzed the fabricated references from the papers which were published between January 2023 and February 2026 in all the peer-reviewed publications across the globe. And they had verified all the references based on their PubMed IDs, their DOIs, or if both of them doesn't exist, then the manually in the Google Scholar. And so if we see like this is the age, maybe until here, when there was no AI, and you see like there was only like four fabricated references per 10,000 papers. And this is the early boom, AI boom phase, like in the January and up till July 2024. And we see that the number of fabricated references are being increased in here. And if we talk about the current situation, the earlier this year, which is like the January and February 2026, so we can see the number of fabricated references per 10,000 papers are 57, which is actually almost 15 times higher than the baseline, which was set before the use of AI. And before it was pretty much sustained, but right now it's been like on rise every year, every quarter. And we can see like this is too much because people just use AI to write things for them, to even to find the citations for them, and AI would generate a random content for your paper, for your writings, and then you would be looking for a reference, and then you don't find, but the AI would fabricate a reference for you. This is hilarious. This is funny that there is something which was randomly generated content, which was not science, which was not validated by the scientific arguments, the data. And then for such thing, you would also use a fabricated reference. However, this is the one picture of of use of AI, and this shows the demerits of AI use. On the other side, there had been a very good use of AI, which is helping scientists to do a good science. One of them is this paper which was published last week in Nature, and they reported this multi-agent system for automating scientific discovery. They named this agent Robin. And Robin is a biological scientist, and it can do many things very quickly, and it can speed up the discovery by 200 times. So in this paper, they showed one experiment that they wanted to do a drug discovery for age-related macular degeneration, and they asked Robin. And Robin suggested them one of the drug which was already existing. But no one was using for that particular drug for the macular degeneration. And then the Robin did a lot of in silico experiments to validate their findings. And they find like, okay, this drug is a great thing. But the Robin also tells you how you should validate those results in the lab. And then authors did all those experiments in the lab and validated the findings of Robin. And use of this AI multi-agent system, Robin, speeds up the discovery by 200 times as compared to the conventional research methods. So in this one slide, actually, I'm showing you the merits of using AI in research, where it can speed up discovery, can help you reach the goals, while we are suffering for many problems in all the scientific fields. We have too many research questions. We have too many the actual problems in the health, in the education, in the sociology, which we want to address. So I think this is a very positive way to address such questions and to find the answers of those questions the way Robin did. However, the demerit is to just to do some quantitative effect to your profile, just be like get a paper quickly. You use the AI that will be actually generate some random content and then also fabricate your reference. This is a demerit, and we should not use this. And actually, we should use AI responsibly and in a way that it really help us speed up the discovery. So next slide, please. So while I was seeing this, and I found this a recently published editorial in Nature, which actually this title attracted me, and it caught my attention. This is like why AI cannot do good science without humans. So as a scientist, as a science students, we always want to do a good science. We always want to make an impact. We always want to answer some unanswered questions. This is all about research and science. And definitely, but when we look into it in the recent AI hype, we think like, okay, AI may help us. And definitely there are some aspects where AI can help us. However, it's good to understand that where AI can help us and where AI cannot. For example, all the AI will always tell you the things which are based on the data which it was trained for. However, AI was trained on a limited data, almost all AI models, but you have your own personal insights, you have your observations, you have like a lot many other things which AI cannot do. And I think that this editorial addressed many of these things, and I highlighted the two paragraphs from this paragraph from here and another paragraph from here. So I think I'll read it for you because I thought the message here is very much clear. And it states more broadly, the expertise of researchers and the accumulated wisdom of teams that have worked on a problem, perhaps for decades, might prove impossible for machines to replicate. Humans are also needed to train future generations, and the knowledge is built in part on lessons learned from failures and inefficient meanderings. Human messiness, curiosity, and playfulness have fueled countless discoveries and helped to inform society's ethical frameworks. AI system might offer great efficiency in some instances, but we don't yet know whether great efficiency equates to greater insight. I think the last sentence is a very good message that AI may help you to achieve the great efficiency, but insights are purely yours, and you have the insights based on the failures, based on your observations based on the knowledge which was not published, which was not documented in the data, based on the curiosity you have for your ownness. And I think this is, and I have a very good example. Like recently, for many years, I have been working on some sort of population genetics and olfactory receptors, which are involved for the smell. And recently, I'm working on a new world monkey species. And I found some really good results from the genetic data. However, I could tell us you like, okay, this is this, and I was not able to understand like how to understand or interpret these data very well, because there was not too much literature about that particular species. Then by chance, on a coffee with a grad student in my lab, I just started talking about the species, and she had spent a lot of time in the field with that particular monkey species, and she know a lot about them. And just while I was like, that was all her observation, that was not documented, but it was just her personal observations. When she started telling me, I learned, oh my god, okay, this is makes a very good interpretation of my data. And this was not like reported, not documented, not everywhere. I think this is the power of human insights, and which AI cannot take you there. Your personal insights are always needed. So let's go to the other paragraph, which states, the previous slide. Sorry, I did. Jacqueline, previous slide. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I just read the first paragraph. I'll just see the second one. Scientists should not allow negative view of AI to drive them away from exploring the possibilities that AI co-scientists might hold for research. Equally, however, they must rise above the din of AI hype and advocate for their own importance to remind the wider public, funders, and fellow researchers that science still needs humanity, and that not every grant proposal need include an AI project. So I like this project, this paragraph, and why I highlight it is I think this is a very good balance. There may be some people who are like doing everything using AI, and there are some peoples which maybe like totally reject the use of AI. I think we have to have a balanced opinion, balanced practices, like when we should use AI and when we should not. And I think that I like also like this the sentence that the not every grant proposal need include an AI project. As I see like recently almost all publications in big journals and all big groups, even they are not doing, they will try to say that okay, they are using the AI, here is like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all those kind of things. But maybe for some questions you really do not need to use AI, but where it's really needed, you should use. However, when it's not needed, you should not use. There should be a balance between this, and there should be an acceptance for this in the science, in the research. And I think this acceptance develops by us, because we are the science community, we are the research community. We should learn and adopt this, and if we should learn and we should adopt, then I think this is like it's gradually travels to the whole entire scientific community. Okay, let's next slide. Okay, thank you. So here based on all the things we discussed, here is nothing new, but just the key messages I listed based on the things which I already said in the previous slides. And the first thing is like AI cannot replace your thinking, and your insights are original. As I mentioned that AI is based on the data. So it will think, it may help you brainstorm, but the brainstorming would be based on the data it has. But as a scientist, as a researcher, you may have an atypical data. And remember, the discovery always happens on atypical data, because for the typical data, you already know something. If you want to really discover something new, it means you have to had the atypical data. And if you get the atypical data, definitely you should always validate your data and then interpret that data. That would help you think the novel ways and make actual novel discoveries, and that will place you distinct from the other people who may have been doing the same kind of experiments, same kind of research. So that's why it is important, and it will help you to develop your own insights, and those would be totally original. And AI, I think these two are very much important for our scientists, for research, and especially for the young researchers, early career researchers. And next is like always check for AI output accuracy. I think that's very much important. Here I put this figure, and this is this had been very popular because this was published in a paper that they published this figure. There's a mouse with this giant penis because the authors use AI to draw this, and it was this way, and it passed the peer review, it passed the editorial, and then it had been used in the memes and in the very making fun of the authors. It was later retracted, and I tried to find this paper, and I couldn't find like recently. But this is like something would happen if you just blindly trust AI. You should always check all the facts. You should always look for the accuracy. And as I mentioned, I showed in the earlier slides that you should never use the AI content because it may be randomly generated. And I showed you the number of retractions due to that randomly generated content as becoming very high. And also the fabricated references, because I'm sure like AI wouldn't find any reference for this kind of anatomy, but then it will definitely fabricate the reference for you. So it's very much important that you always check for the AI output accuracy. And the next is linked with this one, like you should never trust the AI citations, references. It may be fabricated. You should always keep your own library. You should trust your own library. And I was not like constantly reading the new literature before, but for some time I'm reading it and I'm loving it, and it's helped me up to date my own thinkings, thoughts, and my research questions. I think it's a great practice, and you should, maybe if you can do that, I think that's the best thing. Like you just keep reading the papers. And next. Okay, so this is never generate, and there's like four messages, like never generate or impute data using AI. Maybe if you want to do something quick, you have to catch a deadline, you have to do an assignment, anything, that you should never ask the AI to generate the data. Or if you have the generate, you already have the data and there is something missing, you want to impute it, never use the AI. Always, I think there have been some impute pipelines which are statistically valid. You should use those kind of things rather than asking AI to generate or impute data for you. So next. And always validate AI analysis independently. I think Elnaz in her presentation mentioned this something somewhere that she appreciate, like if the students want to do something, for example, a statistical test, they may ask AI like, oh, which test they should use, but they should not use the AI to do those all calculations, because this is the way we do the responsible testing. Maybe you can even like ask the AI to help them code in the R if you don't know, or if you don't know how to do it in a tool, you should ask AI. Okay, but you should validate all those findings, even if you ask the AI to do them. But I personally like prefers that it should be done by yourself, because I do not see it a great practice if you put your unpublished data to the AI just for the sake of some smaller analysis. And who knows that data is used for all those model validations, and your discovery no more remains that discovery. And next. And this is, I think this is the most repetitive thing I'm saying, is like the never write AI outputs in scientific manuscript, because these have been associated with retractions. And most of, already showed you the number, because these had been the key factors for the retractions. So always avoid this. The next. And I think this is my message. The home take home message for this presentation is that it's your publication, not AI's. You're the only one responsible for it. If the paper is retracted, it would be the retraction of you, not the retraction of AI. You should be the only one responsible. It will push back your career, not the AI's career. They just like keep working the same way. So it's very important for you to act as a good scientist and use a responsible analysis and the responsible use of AI in your research. I wish you good luck for your research, and I think it would be great that you wanted to know about the best use of AI, and that's why you were here. And I hope you will be using the best practices for the AI use in research. And there are also guidelines from the University of Calgary. I think that you can follow. That would be even more helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shoaib. We are going to turn it over now to our last presenter, Lily.
Hi everyone, my name is Lily De. I would like to thank Jacqueline, Shreyashi and Urnisha for arranging such an impactful event to share the knowledge with all of you guys. So my day-to-day involves working directly with students in intro and intermediate programming courses. That position puts me in a pretty unique spot, like I'm a frontline observer of how students actually interact with AI tools in real time. And that exactly why I want to share the knowledge with you. Like AI tools are completely embedded in student workflows now. That's a real gap between what's happening on the ground and what are we equipped to handle. So what I want to do today is bridging that gap with practical evidence-informed strategies that you can actually use. Next slide, please. So here is the scenario that I found during my TAing in the classes. So the one scenario is like AI as an effective debugging partner. So what happened actually? I found that a student was stuck on a null pointer exception, which is pretty much common in when someone working with programming. But what was the difference this time was how they showed up. Instead of just pasting their code into an AI and copying whatever fix came back, they had asked it like, what does this error mean and what should I look for? So they used that explanation to form a hypothesis. They came with a direction with reasoning, which is AI guided. So rather thinking by their own, they are replacing with a hypothesis provided by AI. And when I asked them to walk with me through their code, at some point they could explain every single line of their code, but that's the tell. That's how learning actually, how this learning actually happened. So what this also showed me is that AI can serve as a kind of first responder. Like in the midnight, when no TA is around, giving the student just enough to keep moving forward without just handling them the answer. And the long-term result is that students' debugging skills visibly improved over the semester because they were practicing the process, not just collecting solutions using AI tools. So from that, the key takeaway here is very straightforward. When AI is used to understand errors rather than copy fixes, it reinforces learning. The tool is not the problem. The prompting behavior is what matters, that how we are using the tools. Next slide, please. So here comes with the second observation, which is over-reliance and the black box problem. So I found that a student submitted a well-structured assignment, clean code, correct output, looked great on paper. But during a routine check-in, I asked them to work me through their recursive function, and they couldn't. They couldn't explain their own submissions. When I dug a little deeper, they admitted at some point, obviously, what had happened. They had taken some AI generated code, made a few minor edits, and submitted it. And they never actually worked through the logic themselves, which is alarming. So, and here is the thing, the code worked, obviously, but the understanding has some limitations. The patterns that followed made that really clear. When requirements shifted even slightly, they were lost because they had no mental model to adapt from. When the same concept showed up on the exam, for little changes, they are struggling. So, because you cannot cheat your way through a closed book test with no TA, no ChatGPT, this is what I call the black box problem. The student interacted with AI as a vending machine, input assignment, receiving code without even engaging it why it worked. So after this gets something really important in learning science. Productive struggles matters. The difficulty of working through a problem yourself is not an obstacle to learning. It is learning. When AI bypasses that struggle entirely, students miss the thing that actually builds real understanding. So the question is not just did they use AI? It is, did they ever have to think what is happening behind? Next slide, please. So after seeing both, um, I went through the reflection on these experiences. The student who used AI brilliantly and the one who let it do their thinking for them, I started reflecting on what these experiences were actually teaching me, and a few patterns became really clear to me. At first, what I noticed, like AI use exists on a spectrum. It's not inherently good or bad. It ranges from genuinely helpful to deeply counterproductive. And the difference often comes down to how the student is engaging with it. And secondly, articulation reveals understanding. This became my informal litmus test. The students who could explain their code, those were the ones who had actually wrestled with it. The ones who couldn't explain it almost always hadn't. And the third one is speed doesn't equal learning. A student can have working code in 10 minutes and still have learned nothing. First output can actually mask really slow conceptual growth, and that's a dangerous illusion. And fourth, dependency creeps in quietly. Students who learned on AI heavily in the early weeks often really struggled when they had to work independently later. So, those observations directly shaped how I think about teaching nowadays. I started requiring students to explain before they submit. Understanding has to be demonstrable, not just implied by a grade. And I learned into the idea that struggle is the curriculum. Productive difficulty is not something to eliminate, it's where the actual learning lives. Also, I realized students need guideline before tools. Handling them AI access without explicit frameworks for responsible use is setting them up to misuse it. And finally, I started using reflection as assessment, simply asking, how did AI help you on this? Turns tools into use a learning prompts in itself. So these are not just a philosophical position, they are things I arrived by watching students in real time. Next slide, please. So, all right, so let's get practical. Everything I have shared so far leads to these 3 concrete strategies that you can start right away, no major courses redesign required. Just I got 3 interesting strategies based on my experience. The first one is explain your code to me. This is the simplest and honestly the most powerful thing I have added to my practice. After any AI assisted submission, just um, asking students to work with you through their code verbally. That's it. You don't need to build a rubric around it or schedule anything formal. It works in office hours, in labs, or in 2 minutes check-in at the start of the class. And the second strategy I have added is add AI reflection prompts to the assignments. Instead of trying to detect AI use, like which is a kind of losing game, flip the script and make AI use something students have to think about explicitly. Like add 1 or 2 questions to the assignment itself. Did you use AI, or if you use, how you use, at what point, what prompt you have used? And the final one is design for reasoning, not just output. So this one requires a bit more intentional design, but the payoff is significant. Instead of asking students to just write a function, asking them to write it and explain the trade-offs of their approach. Add trace exercises, oral components, or incremental check-ins. Things where the shortcut value of AI drops significantly because the task requires demonstrated thinking. So, and pair AI open tasks with AI closed assessments. If a student truly understands what they build with AI assistance, they should be able to demonstrate that understanding without it. That pairing is where authentic comprehension becomes visible. So none of this require that much effort. They just make shallow use much less rewarding than genuine engagement. So I wish all of you a good luck and a very evidence-driven, practical, hands-on AI tools use. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily. Thank you so much, Elnaz, and thank you so much, Shoaib, for sharing your expertise, your experiences. And I have been listening and trying to draw a few concluding thoughts. So one, I would like to say the diverse perspective and the diverse range of experiences really provides us with a lot of strategies to work with. So, Elnaz, your experience as an instructor, having some intentional design work going into assignments, going into how you set up your course, really provided us with strategies on like not to go towards prohibiting, but really discussing with your students what is good AI usage, responsible AI use, and how can you support them through the assignments that you have built on that responsible use of AI. So that's really good to see like what you could do as an instructor and how you could be intentionally designing your course to support them in using responsibly AI. Shoaib, I particularly want to focus on like what you brought in because we do talk a lot about AI usage in the teaching context, but the lens that you provided us today is really useful in looking at AI in the research context. And individually, we are all graduate students, postdoctoral scholars, early career researchers, and we are doing research actively, but we are also mentoring the next generation of researchers. So what we do, how we do research, and what ethical ways we conduct research is what we pass on to the next generation of uh, researchers. So how would you discuss this with your mentees is by how you are doing the research yourself and demonstrating that and modeling that to the mentees that work with you in the labs in the research project. So really appreciate bringing that lens, and I like looking at the papers that you picked for this, because I have not been keeping up with research in that context. So it was really interesting to see what's happening in the research world when it comes to AI usage. Um, I really like what you mentioned about it's your publication, not AI. So whatever decision you make, be ready to defend it. You are in the driver's seat, and you have to defend that. Um, and finally, Lily, your perspective as a TA is super helpful, because a lot of us are in those places where we are in direct contact with our students. So TAs have this unique position where you can see learning happen in the real time. So how do we provide them support in that real time is very, very important and critical to support instructors such as Elnaz who are designing the courses. But then we need the TAs to have those conversations on a daily basis and also to model how to use AI responsibly. So I really like that really low effort, almost like I wouldn't say low effort, but low effort strategy of just asking students like, explain your code to me, and that being the start of a conversation on using AI responsibly. So thank you so much, all of you, for sharing all your experiences. And thank you to all our people who joined in. I think we have some time, a lot of time for questions. So I will pass it on to Jacqueline to start us off. You can also use the chat to add questions, and I'll be monitoring that as well. So yes, just opening it up for questions now.
Well, I have lots of questions, but I'll give it a moment. If you'd like to raise your hand or ask a participant something, feel free to unmute yourself.
I'm interested in talking about the like using assigning reflections about AI use, because I found, and this was not having people reflect about AI use, and this is particularly for Lily, and this is in a data science course. They weren't reflecting about AI use, but I could really tell that all the reflections I had, well, that the instructor had assigned for a course I was TAing this year, like all of them were very similar. So I was like, you definitely used AI to write this reflection, and they weren't reflecting on their AI use. And I think in that case, it might be a little bit easier to tell because it would require something specific. Whereas like these were all like, I mean, that was also often a way I could tell was because they reflect on something in their charts and you're like, you didn't do that at all. So like, that doesn't make sense. But yeah, I'd love just like more, if you have any other thoughts about like students using AI to attempt to do reflections, and if you've seen that and how you've talked to students about that, and if you've had any success convincing them not to.
So what I have seen so far, mostly students used AI during the submission of assignments, also in case of project designs, like or idea generation. So when I saw some of the samples, definitely nowadays we can understand what content is being generated by AI. So I just talk to them very politely and very friendly so that they can feel comfortable to talk to me. I really don't want them to have that feelings that, oh my God, we have used AI, this is a very illegal things. I don't give them that kinds of feeling. So I talk to them very friendly so that they can discuss with me easily. So at some point they shared the actual things what happened, but it is true that they try to change little bit, but not everyone, definitely. There are some cases who just do the work in the very last moment and putting everything using AI. So I gave them in that, if I found something that similar kinds of things that 100% AI generated things they submitted. So uh, if definitely I had to talk to the instructor to take some extra time for them. So I discussed with the instructor and try to give them some extra time as a recovery so that they could understand what they did and in future they couldn't do the same thing again.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want to add, like people who are in the TA positions, like when it comes to academic misconduct related AI usage, please take it up with your instructor and ask for their guidance on these cases.
Yeah, I remember that I found one cases like in the assignment submission, we found two submissions exactly similar. I mean, it's not only AI generated, but also they copied each other fully 100%. So for this is academic misconduct, I would say. So I had to inform the instructor. So instructor deals with that based on the policy. So in that situation, I have nothing to do with, for the student here.
Other questions from folks? Well, maybe I'll just interject and ask something. I think it kind of relates to what we've just been talking about and like whose responsibility is it to have these conversations. It really seems like across all three of your presentations, the emphasis is really on starting these conversations early in the roles where we have the ability to do so instead of waiting until it gets to a point where it's now in the punitive area and we're having to maybe get an instructor of record or an associate dean involved or the Office of Student Misconduct. So yeah, I was curious about how some of those conversations actually look in the classroom or how you've envisioned them looking in the classroom. So would you start out the year by having a conversation about AI? Do you build up a set of, shared classroom values around what the whole group considers to be reasonable use versus unreasonable use, or what are some of the strategies that you've seen in sort of socializing AI use in your teaching experiences? And that's open to all of you to answer however you'd like.
I could jump in. So, what I usually do is during the first class, I discuss this with them and I started a kind of brainstorming first. So I say, okay, have you used AI ever to do any of your assignments? How do you use it? And then sometimes if I feel like I haven't done this, but sometimes I feel like maybe students, because it's prohibited in the course outline, they would not open up about it. So what I'm thinking about in my next courses is that having a kind of anonymous, minty kind of thing for them to share their ideas. And then what I have done already is if I don't receive any responses from them, I still go on with talking to them about my own experiences, where it works, where it doesn't work, and how we should remain responsible. As Shoaib mentioned, as Lily mentioned, we are always responsible, accountable for whatever we are submitting to our instructor or TA. So that's how I bring it up in my classes.
Thanks, Ashwini. Other thoughts from our panelists?
If I may just add, maybe even thinking about like with your mentees. So if you are mentoring students in your labs or in your research groups, like what type of conversations are you having around AI? Is it something that is coming from the supervisor? Is it something that you as a postdoc or a grad student are working with your mentee in developing? Just opening it up to anybody in the room to share along with our panelists.
I could maybe share a little bit of my experience. I wouldn't say this is the way to go forward, but I think it's an important part of the conversation. So I also teach a few courses over at Athabasca University, specifically in medieval history. And those courses are very writing heavy, as most humanities-based disciplines are. So there's lots of essay work, and there's only a limited number of resources for folks to use in their essays. And so we do see some very creative uses of AI. And obviously the biggest thing kind of goes back to Shoaib's point about hallucinated citation. So as an instructor, or I guess I'm an individualized study tutor, they call it, so kind of like a TA. My first task when I'm marking a paper is to look at the citations and see if they link to actual sources. And obviously that's a changing landscape in AI technology. And now we're seeing some very interesting and terrifying ways that AI is kind of getting around what used to be hallucinated citations. But nonetheless, I will typically, in those cases, prompt the student. It's challenging in an online environment, obviously, to have a student come to your office hours or catch them after class, but to prompt them and try to say, like, these are some of the concerns that I have with an assignment before I'll actually mark it. And obviously it's different. We don't adhere to strict deadlines in the same way that a semester term would, but having that conversation and just saying, here are some of the red flags for me with this assignment. And these are some of the things that we would typically see if someone was relying on AI. So not making that accusation outright, but saying a lot of the inconsistencies in what you've submitted align with the use of AI. And so I just want to sort of like have a conversation about that. Let's chat about how you're using it. If it gives the opportunity for the student to say, no, I did not use it, and I'd like you to mark it as is, in which case there are other mechanisms in place. But I think it can be challenging to not come at these conversations from an accusatory place or having already made assumptions about why the student might have used it or if they used it at all. And so I think that just echoes that critical nature of having these conversations early when you have the opportunity to do so, because it allows you to kind of socialize and get sort of like group thinking happening, whether it's in a lab or in a tutorial or in a lecture hall, about where are folks' values at and what's important to them, and do they want to let the group down, speaking to the sort of quality of the work itself and that kind of being degraded if we're just using AI and recycling the same content. So yeah, it can be challenging, I think, to not come at it from that sort of place of presumption, but I think that just speaks to the importance of having these conversations early.
Could I add something to that? So in my postdoc role, I do get to co-supervise or mentor some of these honor students or summer students. And then what I usually, this might sound funny, but because I want to kind of bring down that barrier of the barrier that they think that I think that they shouldn't use AI in the first like the first times that I meet with them, I try to use AI in some way and then indirectly show them, okay, let's check like what AI says about this method. And then after I get the response from AI, I say, okay, let's check the references and see if this is really valid. And let's see what the papers really say. Is this method really valid for this objective that you have in your project or not? So I try to show them that it's okay to use AI, but this is how we should use it. We should validate it in our research, etc., as Shoaib mentioned.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's definitely something to sort of modeling what constitutes acceptable AI use in an academic environment and how that can impact the students as they're seeing that happen. So they know it's not just it's a hard no for me across the board. You're never going to see me use it. You're never going to hear me say it's a good idea. But like here's a way that I'm using it as a tool, right, to support my work, and that you might be able to adapt for your own use too. Any other questions from our audience, or questions from our panelists too?
This is not a question to anybody in particular, but just something that what I just want to hear if anybody has any ideas. How do you encourage students to now read primary literature when AI tools can summarize papers and they can read the summary without really developing the skill of reading a primary literature and making sense of the process of writing and also data interpretation. So is there any, like, anybody has experienced this and all has any ideas on how they're doing this?
I think it's a very difficult task. So, but I think as I'm somewhere mentioned in my publication, in my presentation, that I work with the population genetics, and many of the calculation methods, the statistical genetics methods, which are basis for the modern calculations, are based on something which happened like maybe decades ago. So we always like look for those traditional papers, and the calculation methods, like those are really tricky. And for example, if I do genetics, it means my primary background is in biology. So for me to understand a particular formula is may not be possible, because it that was something very statistical, very mathematical, the mathematical modeling. Maybe I had read the last time mathematics maybe in the high school or maybe in the college, not after that, and it would be difficult to understand. So here I think AI really can help us to understand how does that formula work. But for example, and sometimes like we need to do what happened was, okay, I just want to tell some story that we had a grad student, so he was working on some calculations that in the so he was in the same lab where I got my PhD. So he was having trouble. So he was asking me. I told him that okay, but the way I did, and then he just he couldn't actually get all those things, and he just like went to the GPT, and that gave him some insights, and he couldn't understand. But the thing is, like, what happened was he got something because there was, for the same method, there was several calculation methods, but there was only one of those calculation methods which like we wanted to use because that fits best over data. But for some reason, because that particular method is not that popular, okay, so then the AI model he was using was always referred him to some other model, and then he was trying to understand my insights and thoughts, and he wasn't following. And then I just shared him like the paper where all those methods were published, and he read that. And so I think this is an example that also like how like you can get some responses, but if the data or some popularity for some kind of knowledge is not that much common, so there is a huge chance that while training a model, because it must be someone training like me, and maybe I do not know too many things, right? So I only knew the things which I do or which I read, and even of for everything which read, I think I would only remember what I want to remember, right? Everything else would be missing. So I think this is an indication that it's not possible even for the AI systems for now that they know the atypical things. And this is one thing. And then that he could only validate my opinion based after reading the paper, which was actually published in 70s. So it was quite old. Okay. And and you know, like, it was very difficult even for me to find that papers, the full paper for that years ago, but I had already preserved it with me, that I knew that okay, it's difficult to find. I think this is something like we need to tell the people like this kind of examples. And also it's been sometime that I subscribe to the natures, like it will come like every Sunday to my inbox, and everything I would read that cannot be in the AI models, because this is something with like being very new things. And every time I read about the things, uh, I learn about those things, I really feel like, okay, I am getting something new. And what is special is there may not be a very different, a very new knowledge synthesis, but it's a different perspective of telling the things. And uh, I really I really love it. And I think for the people who are doing research and who want to do the science, they're always looking for uh, some new perspectives. Okay, because there is like many professions, there are many profession streams, but we chose science. Okay, well, the science is driven by curiosity. Okay, if you are curious, especially I think the graduate students and the postdocs and early career researchers, if you are curious and you really want to learn more, then I think it's important for you to learn new perspectives. So for all those new perspectives, the basic knowledge base doesn't change much. That remains as it is. But you learn a new perspective, and then this is the way like how we develop the criticism to some of the knowledge, or we develop the new insights and the new perspectives. And I think this is what is the importance of uh, learning. And we know, like, even we, if we think about like outside of the science, there is like a lot of literature we read. Sometimes we would read the novels or the poetry or any kind of thing that can definitely entertain us, all right? But if you just ask like the AI model, okay, just give me something like this, so they may not have that much impact on us, right? Sometimes the very popular novels and the books or some music that has the impact on us. I think this is the same way with the science.
I think if we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank our speakers again. And I also encourage you, participants, to reach out to us with topics of interest to you. We want to keep this momentum going, as Anisha mentioned at the beginning. So we will send out an email with all the resources that we could put together on AI, including some of the UCalgary and Taylor Institute resources, as well as a form to give us some suggestions on topics. Please feel free to email us with ideas. We look forward to hosting another one of these sessions soon. Thank you once again, Elnaz, Shoaib, and Lily, for showing an interest, initiative, and sharing all of your experiences and strategies with us.